Natten går tunga fjät runt gård och stuva, kring jord som soln förlät skuggorna ruva.
To be continued. Take it away, Kat.
Thanks, Sean. So first off, I just want to say that Sean's presentation is brilliant. He went into great detail explaining how everything in the Bible is really about the seed, how precious it is, and how it is the source of true enlightenment. His work delves into the inner micro workings of man. Mine will be more on the outer macro workings, although I will share some things I noticed about the inner structure as well. And how what Sean just shared with us is tied to our world. The world is the macro, to the human, the micro. Here we have the world card of the tarot. Notice it shows the macro, the green wreath, representing the world, and the micro representing man. The world is flanked by the tetramorph, man, eagle, bull, and lion, which are the four Gospels of the New Testament used to control Christians, which are the white Europeans of the North. And we see them in the four corners, which represents north, east, west, and south, or news. Remember, they control the media, including the news. And with the revocation of the Smith-Mundt Act in the U.S. under Obama's administration in 2012, the news doesn't even have to be the truth. They could have gotten sued for it before, and now they can't get sued. How convenient. Exoteric versus esoteric. Sean and I decided to do this presentation because we both saw a serious issue with fellow members of our race in that they could break most of their programming except for Christianity. That seemed to be the hardest nut to crack. After recently foraying into Christianity and, thank God, coming out of it, we both came to the realization that it was a foreign desert religion, that this religion was a tool being used by the very people trying to control the world. And so we knew we had to help our brethren wake up to this deception. Christianity is one of three desert religions, the other two being Islam and Judaism, otherwise known as the Abrahamic religions, all three devised by the Magi. We subsequently read the Orlinda book, and that was a big help because we saw how the Magi, which we are calling the middlemen in this presentation, were, from the beginning, always playing the middleman as priests, traders, and later bankers, trying to control people and gain power, and how they took Friar's stories and used them in their Bible. By giving some of our truths, it was a way for them to manipulate our people into thinking the Bible was the truth. But Sean and I knew there was more to it than that, and started researching the hidden knowledge in the Bible to prove this. We knew from studying the Masons that they always give an exoteric meaning to the profane, which is the general public, and keep the esoteric meaning for the adept, which is their secret members. Well, the Bible is just another tool in their belt. I think Sean did an excellent job in showing you the esoteric knowledge of the Bible and how it relates to human anatomy and why it is so important for us to know. I'd like to add my thoughts on the subject here. The Orlinda book is a history of the white race from a first-person account of family members through the generations. In it, we learn what our ancestors thoughts were on God and religion, among many other topics. Note that the OLB never purports to be the Word of God, like the middlemen do about their Bible. The Word of God is His creation, nature. Manly P. Hall, one of the most prominent Masons and teacher of the esoteric knowledge within the Bible, was Manly P. Hall. Many look at him like a father figure, but did he really care about humanity as a whole? He was just another service to self keeper of hidden knowledge. The opposite of the secret societies were the Aryans, who were open and public about their knowledge and beliefs. The open hand salute as opposed to the closed fist of communism. The closed fist of communism by way of deceit. There was a persistent rumor that followed Manly his whole life, that of him being a hermaphrodite. To the Kabbalists, the ultimate enlightenment is the melding of man and woman. And so if this is true of Manly, we shouldn't be surprised why he became an honorary member. His full name was Manly Palmer Hall, but he went by Manly P. Hall. Why? Because he has an esoteric meaning hidden in his name. He reminds me of the Masonic gatekeeper Neil deGrasse Tyson, who uses all three names because it has a hidden meaning, that of adding up to 33 in numerology. Or his cohort Carl Sagan, whose last name backwards is Nagas, which means snake. Yes, they are all snake oil salesmen. Kabbalists equal Masons. Snake and 33, both doing the hidden hand. Well, Manly was no different. Manly P. Hall, or Manly Fall, right? If you put the P with the H, Phall, you get the F sound. Manly Fall. The fall of man, which is the inverse of enlightenment. Going down the spine instead of up it. Manly, with his encoded name, was telling us esoterically that he was a contributor to our fall. Like the two-sided Masonic mirror, the double-headed Janus, and the public white pope with the hidden black pope, through Manly's lukewarm esoteric work, he tried to persuade us that he was a good guy, a teacher of enlightenment. But really, he was just another gatekeeper, keeping us from the gate of heaven, from true enlightenment. And here's Anthony Hopkins doing the Masonic mirroring in black and white and doing the hidden hand in the show called Westworld. What Manly did give us was really just window dressing. He never talked about their ultimate great work, this melding of the male and female, the making of the Baphomet. And if he was such a human made from birth, he would have first-hand experience on this. But there was no mention in his writings. Manly P. Hall, The Fall of Man. When the Mason learns that the key is the proper application of the dynamo of living power, he has learned the mystery of his craft. The seething energies of Lucifer are in his hands. Manly P. Hall. The angels, whites, control the vital body, the head. And the Lucifers, middlemen, control the desire body, the sacral plexus. And it is a struggle between the two on this earth plane. From Manly's quote above, we can see which team he is on. The seething energies of Lucifer are in his hands. Note that this is a struggle in the macro sense, meaning outside forces, Lucifers, which are service to self middlemen in the physical flesh, are influencing this control through many avenues. Being a hermaphrodite, manly would have characteristics of both male and female. The melding of the two make their Baphomet Star of David. Notice the Star of David is made up of 2 triangles with 3 sides each. So with both melded, you get 33. Also, when you put the 2 triangles together, the male upward and the female downward, you get the union of the 2, known as the generative principle. This is one principle that the Masonic G stands for. True enlightenment, in the macro sense, would be the complete separation of the 2 triangles. The male in all his glory, showing strength, stature, and dominance. A true manly man, unlike Manly Hall. And the female with a classical hourglass figure of delicate soft features and womanly wisdom. Freya. And Freya means free. Christ and enlightenment. And speaking on the body, we read in Manly's book, The Occult Anatomy of Man, that the form of the cross is the form of the human body. But let's take that thought a little further. Jesus crucified, attached to the cross, shows how man and the divine are connected. The divine being enlightened man. Jesus is God in the flesh, showing us man can become godlike by being enlightened. Notice his head is illuminated. He is enlightened. This is the great work of the Masons, of the Kabbalists, of the Lucifers, to become enlightened. Man becoming God. Galatians 2:20. I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. With Christ, the fusion of man with God when being illuminated. The wooden cross represents man. Jesus represents the divine. So Jesus attached, crucified to the cross, symbolizes the divine in man. Except for the Lucifers, enlightenment would be in the inverse position, like the Hanging Man tarot card. Notice he too is enlightened, but in the opposite direction. The hanged man, his path is downwards. Notice his hands are hidden, doing the hidden hand, and his leg is crossed under, showing he is by way of deception. If we look at Christ, who symbolizes illumination in the positive aspect, we see his hands are open and exposed. His legs are straight. Notice the red pants are up and the blue shirt is down. Red represents the right hand path and blue represents the left hand path, the downward path. The Masons show the path they desire body, right? Is the hanged man too, in the symbolism of the initiate. Notice the hangman's noose around his neck, the rope or cable, cabal, dangling loosely around his neck. A student of the Kabbalah. Noose, cable, cabal, Kabbalah. Notice he's wearing similar slippers to the hangman of the tarot. His left breast is exposed. showing he is a follower of the left-hand path, the path of Lucifer. Since he is an initiate, he doesn't have eyes to see, and so is blindfolded. Notice the two pillars resemble pine cones at the top. And of course, we see the two Baphomet Star of Davids in an arc, ARC, which is also for ark, ARK, the Most High, over the door. Remember in Sean's presentation about the ark, the Most High? Remember that each star represents 33, and so two of them equals 66. 66 represents the 66 books in the Old and New Testament used to control the non-Isra elites. You can see here on the devil card the man and woman with the cabal, loosely around their necks as well. This shows they are making the decision to follow the left-hand path themselves through their own free will. And tarot cards are a shortened version of the Torah. Whose book is the Torah? The middleman's. The most popular deck is the one here that I'm giving examples from, called the Rider-Waite deck. Both Rider and Waite were members of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, a Luciferian group. So we see the connection between the Lucifers and the middlemen's Bible here. Remember that the left hand is the sinister hand, and the right hand is the dexter hand. They choose the path of sin. The right hand is pointing up towards illumination in the positive sense, and the left hand is pointing down to the path of animal desire towards hell. Notice the Baphomet is holding the torch downwards, showing that is his path of choice. And as Sean mentioned, devil is the mirror of lived. The right-hand path brings you up the spine to an enlightened life. The left-hand path brings you to carnal desires and a do-as-thou-will lifestyle. The man and woman represent Adam and Eve and shows how they made the wrong choice in the garden, choosing the path of desire instead of illumination, the fall of man. Tarot, Torah, Kabbalists, Masons, Luciferians, the middlemen. It should be obvious that the devil on their tarot card is their Baphomet. The lower half is an animal, showing that they worship the animal nature. On a side note regarding the mirroring, you have probably seen it with Disney's Mickey and how it mirrors the truth, Wicked. And Walt Disney was supposedly a 33rd degree Mason, and they even have a 33 club at Disneyland. We also have Adolf mirrored, and it is hope, which is what he gives us even to this day. H gives us hope. Wheel of Fortune. I mentioned that the tarot is a shortened version of the Torah, and we can see here that this is so because they insert it in their Wheel of Fortune card. And being lovers of wordplay, they can't resist doing it here. Going around the wheel, starting at T and ending back at T, we have tarot, T-A-R-O-T. If we start at T and go counterclockwise, we have Torah, T-O-R-A, and then just put an H in there. Torah is the law, and just like in their books, everything is backwards, against God. They read a book from left to right, backwards. Just like the people that go around the Kaaba stone in Mecca, they go backwards. Same thing. Starting at the R, we have Rota, R-O-T-A, which means circle, which is the wheel we are on in this earth plane. And if we start with the A and go across, then down, and then up, then back to the A, we get A-O-R-T-A, or heart, aorta, heart. They control us through the heart, or in other words, through our passions. The Hebrew letters stand for Yahweh, Y-H-W-H, their God. This wheel is actually taken from Waralda's wheel, which had his name on it. If we look at the Sphinx with the sword, we see it has breasts. It is the melding of the male and female, the Baphomet. We notice the black and white headdress, which is representative of the Masons. We see the fox and know that the letters F, O, and X are all sixes in numerology, and so represent 666, their number of the beast, which is another way to say Lucifer, right? The snake is cunning and sly and represents the staff of Moses. The four beings sitting on the clouds represent Matthew, man, John, eagle, Mark, lion, and Luke, bull, which are the 4 books of the New Testament used to control us. The symbol on the interior of the wheel are the elements, earth, air, fire, and water, so controlling us from above, below, and everywhere in between. Heart is the earth. We have more wordplay with the heart. In the mystery schools, they taught the as above, so below, meaning what is in the heavens is reflected in the earth, and also the so without, so within, how nature without is reflected within our bodies. But God doesn't keep secrets, and so the astute observer and researcher can figure this out on their own. Remember that heart is a perfect anagram for earth, and so the heart in our body represents the earth. And on the earth, the hearth is the center of the home. Hea, H-E-A, is the beginning of heaven, H-E-A-V-E-N. And so we can see the connection there. Heart and heaven. Heaven is in our head, H-E-A-D. Manly tells us that the temple of the gods was thought to be at the North Pole, and because, just like heaven is up, the head is up and is the northernmost part of the body. The North Pole is up and the northernmost point on Earth. Isn't it funny that the Masons actually say that they worship the south, east, and west, but never the north? And they say the north is evil. That's what they say. Not only is the north the home of the white race, but to be illuminated, you basically have to go north. The temple of the gods is in our head, between our temples, in a micro sense, and at the North Pole, the head in a macro sense. Heart, earth, heart, hearth, heaven, haven, head, heaven. So if the head is the heavens and the heart is the earth, then the nether region, or hell, would be the sacral area. Notice the Masons wear a sheep skin apron over this region. They call the profane the sheep. And behind the apron are the genitals, or the Gentiles, which is what they call all non-Hebrews. The word genitals does have genes in it, meaning DNA. Reproduction comes from this area, and again is in part why they use the G in Masonry for the generative principle, right? Genes, genitals, sheep, profane, Gentiles, genitals. The Masonic secret society, like the Christians with their half a fish in the sand, also use a secret way to detect if the other is a fellow of their craft. They will shake hands with a particular grip and ask the other a particular question. Notice the G in the back center and on the masonry work. Also notice their book is on an oriental rug. Their society is from the Orient. And the standing men are all doing the hidden hand. Notice too, there are 22 men. This is to represent the tarot card for Lucifer, the Fool, who is both 0 and 22, the beginning and the end, the Alpha and the Omega. Sacrum Owl versus Sphenoid Owl. What is also behind that sheepskin apron is the sacrum bone, which looks like an owl. But this isn't the only owl bone in the human body. So here's the sacrum bone and how it looks like an owl sitting. The sphenoid bone is the other owl, the as above, so below of the human body. Whereas the sacrum bone is located in hell, the sphenoid bone is located in the center of the brain, in heaven. Notice too that the sacrum owl is in a sitting position, while the sphenoid owl is in a position of motion, in flight. When you reach the sphenoid owl, you become enlightened and can actively create. The sphenoid bone. Owl in flight. The sphenoid owl is the owl of Minerva, for Minerva was a wise North woman who cared about her people, whereas the worshippers of the sacrum owl are the enemies of the North people. Sacrum means sacred, and sphenoid means wedge. Again, showing through the language that they think of enlightenment as going down the spine. For them, the owl in the nether region is sacred, while the owl in the heavens is a wedge. A wedge to what? They're achieving enlightenment over the profane, Norse. And in German, owl is Eule, which is one letter away from Yule, Eule, Yule, God's carrier wheel, owl, Eule, Yule. Athena Minerva with her wise owl in motion. The wheel in motion is where we get the swastika from the Nazi flag and would be a symbol of the as without, body, earth, soul, anima, and spirit, God's creation in motion. Notice the ridge is raised, just like the ridge on Mercator's flat earth map, at the rim of the North Pole. The middle of the flower represents Mount Meru, and the 4 petals represents the 4 islands, which are the 4 sections of the brain. The 4 swirls are showing that it is in motion, creating. God's creation in motion, reflected at the North Pole. Weralda's wheel in motion. The swastika at the North Pole in motion, spinning the winds, is the spirit of the as without, as is the active creative process in our brain when we are illuminated, the as within. And the enemies of the north are the Moloch worshippers, the Sacrum Owl worshippers, the ones who have secret meetings in their sacred groves, the ones who have practiced child sacrifice since the time of the Bible, the great horned owl Moloch, Sacrum Owl. The same enemies that have taken over white countries such as the United States and hid their Sacrum Owl symbol on their dollar bill. Sacrum, sacred. Sacrifice, secret. The dollard bill. Dollards use dollar bills. Dollard means simpleton, dull person. Are they taking the piss out of us? Notice head and dead. The brain dead, the dollard. Head, heaven, is in the north, while dead, hell, is in the south. We know the middlemen are trying to turn us into walking zombies, brain dead, the opposite of enlightenment. Head versus dead. Fear the walking dead. The dead are what they call us Gentiles, genitals, when Gentiles actually should be a name of the South for them. Instead, they call themselves the Israelites, elite, light, enlightened, right? Is that short for enlightened? Israelightened. See how they turn everything into the inverse? The E-light, more like the unlight, unlit, right? Remember, the Un is another name for their god, Lucifer. Israelite, E-light, enlight, enlightened. Un negates things, unreal, undo, just like their United Nations, unravels countries, causing them strife. Unwind enlightenment, going down the spinal cord. UN peacekeepers, which is Orwellian doublespeak. There is nothing peaceful about them. War is peace. And how do they kill the dead in the show, Fear of the Walking Dead? They hit them on the head. If we take the head off of our body, we are dead. If they kill the Norse, north, whose lands are in the head, then the earth is dead. Micro and macro. Jesus wore a crown on his head. This crown was a crown of thorns. Why? Because thorn is an anagram for north. And thorn is also an anagram for throne. Because they know the throne of God is in the head, and it is in the north. Jesus is depicted as white because they know that the Norse are the enlightened ones. The throne is between the temples, the seat of God, and it is Norse. Thorn, north, throne. And the head and the dead are connected by the spine. A universalist world where miscegenation, which means the mixing of seeds, runs rampant. Remember that once mixed, you cannot unmix. We go from nature's diversity to anti-nature's sterile unirace. The as without reflected in the earth, the macrocosm. Sean mentioned that the Jordan River, which is in the south, is their sacred river that represents the spine. However, if the North Pole represents heaven and the head, then the sacred river would flow out from there. If we look at the word Jordan, we notice that it is very similar to fjorden, which means rivers with high cliffs in the Norse language of Norwegian, and are found in the northernmost Norse countries. Fjords are of the north. So the Fjorden would be the sacred rivers coming out of the North Pole. Manly states that in the Vishnu Purana, we are told that creation took place within the womb of Meru. Notice that Mount Meru is in the very center of the earth, located at the North Pole. Space was surrounded by great mountains and cliffs. So that would be Fjorden, right? Called the Chorion. The universe was created out of water and floated in a great sea, the amniotic fluid. Down a ladder, the umbilical cord, came the gods. 4 rivers flowed into the new land, as told in Genesis. These are the blood vessels of the umbilical cord, the 4 indrawing seas at the North Pole. We will see shortly that the womb of Meru is in the head and is called the pituitary gland. Notice that in the Bible's version, they really named the River Jordan after the Fjorden, not because of their river's physical features. The Jordan River is a muddy river with flat banks, nothing spectacular, nothing fitting such an important feature of the body reflected in the earth. And the Jordan flows into the Dead Sea, the head to the dead. What's interesting too is that Galilee means the northernmost circuit. We know a circuit is a circle. So, like the North Pole is the northernmost circuit or circle, they copy the north and do the same thing in the south. But again, what makes their head, their Galilee, special? How does it feature the head of the body in a spectacular fashion? It doesn't, once again. Nothing special. The head and the dead. The muddy, dirty River Jordan with nothing grand about it. We can see too that the area at the North Pole actually looks like a brain in a head. The 4 islands would represent the 4 parts of the cerebrum, and the magnetic mountain in the middle, Mount Meru, would represent the pineal gland. What's interesting is that the pineal gland is the 3rd eye and is the key to enlightenment. So Mount Meru in the middle would be the key to enlightenment here on earth in the macro sense. And we always knew it was a special place, right? And as the Vishnu Purana said, the womb of Meru is where creation took place. Remember, the womb is the pituitary gland. So it takes both the mountain and the womb, or the male and the female, or the pineal and the pituitary, or Adam and Eve in the brain, in the garden, to create this place, the place of creation. And if we look directly south of the magnetic mountain, we have 2 islands at the mouth of the river. These represent the pituitary gland. So we see that the male and female pineal and pituitary glands are needed in the head, heaven, to create ideas. And the male and female are needed in the sacral plexus to create a baby. The as above, so below of the human body. Now let's go back to one line in particular of that Manly Hall quote, where he speaks of the North Pole. He says, "Space was surrounded by great mountains and cliffs called the Chorion." What is a chorion? It is the outer layer of seeds, the outer layer of the fetus in higher vertebrates. And we see that the outer layer of the North Pole is the chorion with its high cliffs. So we have a perfect example of the as within, so without, the micro and the macro. Now, if we look just south of the head on Mercator's map, we have a cluster of islands, Grebeck, Lackland, S. Hugo, Willoughby's Land, and Olichen, none of which are on maps of today, but the only landmass in that area currently is Svalbard, Cold Island, formerly Spitsbergen, Pointed Mountain. And so that would be in the general direction of where the heart of the body would be. Circled are Mount Meru, which is the pineal gland, and the two islands at the mouth of the Fjorden, which is the pituitary gland. And if we look at the general shape of Svalbard Island, we see it resembles a heart. And just south of there, we have Scandinavia, which always reminded me of genitals. Is this the land of the Gentiles? It's interesting, too, that just south of there is the Netherlands, which would coincide with hell of our esoteric anatomy of the earth. Now, I'm not saying that the Netherlands is hell on earth. It's actually a very lovely place and home of the Frisians of the Orlinda book. I'm just saying that it represents, figuratively, a portion of the so without of the human body. Although we must confess that Amsterdam was the banking capital for the middlemen until Cromwell let them back into England in 1656 AD, and they subsequently moved it there. So the middlemen were set up in the low lands of all places. It's like they knew this was the land they should be in to take over Europe. Prostitution is legal in Amsterdam as well as drugs. It is the Sodom and Gomorrah of northwestern Europe. Scandinavia, the land of the Gentiles, genitals. Amsterdam comes from Amster, a middleman nickname for hoarder, and a hoarder is a person who has a mental disorder where they must keep everything and cannot share. Middlemen hoard all the money. They will not share with the rest of humanity. And we also see that phonetically, hoarder is the same as W-H-O-R-E-der, right? Hoarder. With legalized prostitution, Amsterdam is technically the home of whores. Hoarder, hoarder. Svalbard represents the heart. Norway, Sweden, Finland look to me like the genital area. Land of the Gentiles, genitals, with the Netherlands as the nether region, low lands, right? That would be the sacrum area, the sacral plexus. Notice Scotland has the high lands and the Netherlands has the low lands. The land of milk and honey. Also, the land of milk and honey is in the head, the so within, and the head on earth, the so without, we can see is the area of the north. And we know the area of the north is where milk and honey is of abundance. Pituitary, milk, and pineal, honey secretions. The people of the north, such as the Dutch, are famous for their cheeses. The white people of the north are lactose tolerant, whereas the rest of the world are not. Lactose is in dairy, and so the lands of the north are the milk drinkers, while the rest of the world are not. And the best milk drink is commonly called kefir, but also known as Iran. Iran has 50 probiotic bacteria. Yogurt's bacteria can be killed by pasteurization and only has like 7 probiotic bacteria, while Iran's bacteria cannot be killed by pasteurization. Since it can't be killed, once it enters your gut, it stays there and colonizes in your digestive tract, which promotes long life. 50 plus good bacteria, protecting your gut. Iran is an anagram of Aryan, which is another name for a member of the white race. Iran, Aryan. See, it's always in the language. And what is the famous Viking drink? Mead, which is made from fermented honey. This is the drink of the gods. Notice how today they say the bee population is dying, and so less mead can be produced. Is this by design because they don't want us to drink honey? Yes. And we do know that mead has a high alcohol content, but how much did a person drink of it back then? And how did the alcohol affect the liver when it is made from honey and not from grain? I think there's a big difference. We aren't supposed to eat processed sugar, but I do believe that a spoonful of honey is good medicine. I need to note here that there is a big difference between sugar from corn, beets, and sugar cane and sugar from honey. I remember hearing that they are all the same, but they are not. Honey from the very special insect called the bee is special for us. To be or not to be, that is the question. William Shakespeare, Hamlet. Be, to be. Remember that saying, a spoonful of honey makes the medicine go down? The honey is the medicine. I think they did the Mandela effect on that phrase and changed it to a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. All to ruin our health, of course, all to make sure we don't achieve enlightenment because sugar is straight up garbage, right? That's not medicine. That's poison. Head mead. The Iran milk would be representative of the white fluid secreted by the pituitary gland, female. And the mead, honey, would be representative of the yellow fluid secreted by the pineal gland, male. Both are needed for true enlightenment. Could drinking these beverages help to optimize true enlightenment? I would say yes. Everything's in the codes, right? Golden mead, the nectar of the gods. Everything's in God's design. Numbers 14:8. If the Lord delights in us, then he will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land which flows with milk and honey. So the middlemen were saying there in that Bible verse that their God willing, they will be given the land of milk and honey, the lands of the north. They call it their promised land. Their God promised our land to them. What the hey? This is exactly what is happening today. They are taking our white lands over. The middlemen, the metal men, the middlemen, the metal men, always meddling in the affairs of others. The macro, symbolized in the earth plane. Remember when I mentioned the riddle at the beginning of Sean's presentation regarding the Vitruvian man? You might have figured out that the race with the long legs would be the black race, otherwise known as Lyda. The race with the long torso is the Asian race, also known as Finda, and the race that is in direct proportion with the circle and square is the white race, known as Freya. Well, if we take this a little farther, we see that the white race is predominantly in the lands of the north. That's where they originated, right? Which would be the head of the body. The Asian race is predominantly around the equator, or the chest of the body. And the black race is predominantly in Africa, or the southernmost regions, represented by the sacral plexus of the body. We notice that the races are color-coded. getting lighter the closer to the head of illumination, and getting darker as we descend the body to the nether regions. The microcosm reflected in the body, the pineal gland. So let's take a closer look at the so within of our human bodies. If we start at the top, the head, we can see in Michelangelo's The Creation of Adam that the famous painter hid esoteric knowledge within his fresco. We can see that God and his angels are enclosed in a human brain. The 12 angels represent the 12 apostles and the 12 tribes and are really the 12 folds in the brain where knowledge is stored. What the Bible fails to mention, too, is that there are 12 tribes of white races, Freya, 12 tribes of black races, Lida, as well as 12 tribes of Asian races, Finda. The 12 tribes of Israel are 12 tribes after the fact because they are of mixed blood. They were not of the 12 tribes of any of the original races. They came later. And we can see from the yellow outline on the painting the central sulcus, the cingulate sulcus, the sylvian fissure, the optic chiasm, the pituitary gland, the vertebral, and the medulla oblongata. We can see also that God's knee is the pineal gland of the body. Pineal. Michelangelo must have had a good laugh when painting that knee, right? These all just make the knee the pineal. And the vertebral there would be the River Jordan. Notice it is even painted watercolor on purpose. Michelangelo's Creation of Adam that you can clearly see has a human brain painted within it. Pineal and pituitary. Pituitary. Pit is a seed of the fruit. Pituitary is connected to the woman, womb man, as pineal, penis, is connected to the man. Eve, woman, ate of the fruit, the pit, and gained knowledge, just as Adam, man, gained knowledge through the pineal, pine cone. Notice pines is a perfect anagram for penis. The pines are in the head, and the penis is in the dead, and they are connected by the spine. See how in the language all is revealed? Woman, womb man, pines, spine, penis. It's all the same letters from top to bottom, right? Notice that the pine tree grows prolifically in the north. It is a cold weather tree and grows in the head. So that would be the macro, right? And as Sean said, they gave it to us for Christmas. But I do believe we had the tree first because they always usurp anything of value from us. Things like our symbols, our stories, our history, our culture, everything. And so the Christmas tree was the Yule tree. And in the beginning, we would light up these uncut, live pine trees, not cut, dead pine trees of today, with candles to celebrate our ancestors who have gone to their watchstars. And the star at the top represented the North Star, the pole star, the one immovable star in the sky, the seat of God, illumination. They took this lovely symbol and tainted it by having us chop these live trees down, drag them into our houses, and decorate them up like whores with 2-bit makeup. Gifts and Santa Claus or Saint Nick coming down the chimney having us worship the desire body instead of the vital body in our heads. And most of you know that Santa is an anagram for Satan, right? Saint Nick. Nick is a name for the devil or Satan. You notice how we have nicknames, right? So they're not our birth names, they're like a derivation off of the name. We also have the saying, Merry Christmas, while on all of the other holidays, we say Happy New Year's or Happy St. Patrick's or Happy Valentine's, etc. We say Merry Christmas for the feminine, Mary for Mary, Mary. Christmas Eve, Eve, and then Christmas. Mary next to Christ, the pituitary next to the pineal gland, Adam and Eve. The 24th is Christmas Eve, and the 25th is Christmas, putting the pituitary, Eve, female, and the pineal, Christ, male, together for the Yule celebration. Pine trees produce pine nuts. Could pine nuts represent the manna from heaven, the as without? The same is true of the manna that descended to feed the children of Israel in the wilderness, for this manna is a substance which comes down the spinal cord from the brain. Manly P. Hall. From the brain, heaven, north, down the spinal cord to hell, south. It goes from the north to the south, just like the Fjorden flows. Manna from heaven, to nourish the people with knowledge. Revelation 2:17. Whoever has ears, let them hear what the Spirit says to the church. To the one who is victorious, I will give some of the hidden manna. Who has ears to hear? Oh yes, the adept. That would relate to them in their book, the Bible Babel, right? I will give some hidden manna. Does that sound like the God of creation or their God? Remember, the God of creation would not hide manna. Bible Babel. Manna from heaven, coming from above. If the white race is from the North Pole, the brain on Earth, then it would be logical that white people are the spreaders of knowledge to the rest of the world. It is white people who are the inventors and the builders of civilization. With white people gone, so will the attainment of knowledge be gone. And if we look at the place below the Sylvian fissure, we see the cerebellum, which holds the arbor vitae, which means the tree of life. We know the tree of life was located in the Garden of Eden, and the Garden of Eden is located in the head. Manly P. Hall states, it is reasonably certain that the story of Adam and Eve and the Garden of Eden is based upon embryology, and that the womb is the original Garden of Eden. In symbolism, it is represented by the O. So there is a womb in the head, pituitary, and there is a womb in the dead, female body, sacrum area. It does seem that the as above, so below plays out in the human body as well. Pineal, above, connects to penis, below. Pituitary womb, above, connects to female womb, below. And the Sphenoid Owl, above, connects to the Sacrum Owl, below. Manly told us that O symbolizes the womb, and we know that the O also stands for omega, alpha to the omega. The O represents the female, the tree of life. And as the head holds the tree of life above, there is a counter tree as well. We know that in the sacrum area, when an egg is fertilized by a sperm, we have a tree of life below. Yggdrasil, which also means the tree of life, starts with egg. Yggdrasil, egg, tree of life. The tree of life in the head creates thoughts, ideas, inventions, etc. The tree of life in the dead creates babies, man coming back to life in the perpetual cycle, baby in the egg. Although the womb in the sacral area doesn't look like a tree of life, it produces babies and therefore is a womb of life. So technically a tree of life because it bears fruit, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now let's look at the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. To know good and evil, in other words, to know right from wrong. If you are a student of the Oralinda book, you will know that God put Eva in the hearts of man, knowing right from wrong. From the Oralinda book we read, the word Eva is too sacred for common use. Therefore, men have learned to say Evan. Eva means that knowledge which is implanted in the breast of every man in order that he may know what is right and wrong, and by which he is able to judge his own deeds and those of others. That is why no middleman is needed, no priest to interpret God's laws at his whim, otherwise known as moral relativism. Remember, moral relativism means whoever is in charge decides what are good morals and what are bad morals. So it is man determining the morals instead of God. Since the ones in control are service to self members of a particular tribe, good morals would be any morals that benefit them. This, of course, would be to the detriment of the rest of humanity. And the third part, spirit, is the knowledge of good and evil, not only of carnal knowledge, making a choice to save or waste seed, but in making choices that are either pro-nature or anti-nature. And nature is pro-God, since it is an extension of God. It is God's creation, His word, His seed, and it is His seeds, plural. All life on earth is through Him. As it says in the Oralinda book, Woralda is the ancient of ancients, for He created all things. Woralda is all in all, for He is eternal and everlasting. Woralda is omnipresent but invisible, and therefore is called a spirit. All that we can see of Him are the created beings who come to life through Him and go again, because from Woralda all things proceed and return to Him. Woralda is the beginning and the end. Woralda is the only almighty being, because from Him all other strength comes and returns to Him. Adam and Odin. And speaking of seed, we have Adam in the Bible, which is taken from Odin in Norse mythology. You can see how close they appear and sound phonetically. Adam, Odin. I was thinking that Michelangelo's painting, The Creation of Adam, it should be called The Creation of Odin because it's a white man and only he can be enlightened, not Adam of the middleman tribe, right? Odin fell like Adam. The story of Odin in the Oralinda book tells us that Odin betrayed his people by letting his desire body prevail. He followed service to self by allowing the Magi to lure him in with promises of being a king forever, right? Because in the OLB, you can only be a king for 3-year terms. We can see how he is doing the middleman's hanged man. Also notice that Odin is hanging with his arms out for a reason. He is doing the death rune. Notice the life rune is a man with his arms straight and upwards, like what the Nazi salute looks like. Life, beginning, protection. That is what H offered his people. Remember Orwell's doublespeak in 1984? Peace is war. And so they gave us the peace symbol in the 60s when it really stands for war. Death, end, war. So all these people marching, they think they're marching for peace, but they're showing a death symbol, right? They're promoting a death symbol because everyone's ignorant here. And I don't want to go off too much on a tangent, but for those on the fence about 9/11, remember this famous picture? Can we see that it is all a show put on by the middleman to this present day? Titled The Falling Man, The Fall of Man, just like in Manly P. Hall's name. It is the hanged man of the Masons, of the Kabbalists, of the Lucifers, of the middlemen. Notice he is wearing Masonic black and white, and he is in the middle of the black, shaded side of the building and the white, sunny side of the building. He is even conveniently crossing one leg, just like on the Hanged Man tarot card. And I just want to add here an actor's name because it becomes so obvious which path these people follow when we uncover it. There is a British actor named Rufus Sewell. He's played in many movies, but the one probably most familiar to Americans would be Dark City, even though I think he was in a dark, Black Mirror episode too, if you guys watch Black Mirror. Well, if you write his name backwards, you will see something very interesting. Louis Sufer. When you sound it out, you get Lucifer. By chance? Hardly. Rufus Sewell. Louis Sufer. Lucifer. Here, Sewell's character is tied to the Yule instead of the cross. He is the Christ character in this movie. Eva. And if we go back to Eva, the knowledge of right and wrong put into the hearts of men, we can see this is the opposite of what they have Eva, represent in the Bible. In the Bible, they make Eve the most evil thing, corrupting man instead of giving man the knowledge of determining for himself what is right and wrong. And yes, Sean is correct when he speaks of Adam wasting the seed. I do believe there can be more than one esoteric meaning behind the different stories. Manly mentioned that there are 7 meanings behind every story in the Bible, but I think that's just put out there so people think they have to become a Mason to learn them all. Adam and Eve sinned in that they followed their animal desire instead of saving their seed for enlightenment. But it takes both Adam, Pineal, and Eve, pituitary, in the head to become enlightened. Remember, they would represent the land of milk and honey. Milk, pituitary, and honey, pineal. What's worrisome is that the programmed take the Bible at exoteric face value and make Eve, woman, evil. How much suffering has befallen the fair sex because of this misconception? Where nightmares come from. If we go back to the tree of life, Yggdrasil, we can see another meaning. In the word Yggdrasil, we have Drasil, which actually means horse. And it makes me think of Odin and his horse, Sleipnir. This is symbolic of the creator and the Yule. Odin, God, riding his horse representing the motion of the wheel, the spirit creating in a macro sense. Odin on Sleipnir, Sleipnir, sleep. Odin, sun, day, and Sleipnir, night. Nightmares, nightmares. Nightmares. Nightmares possibly got its name from Sleipnir, Odin's horse. Sleipnir, sleep mare. In Norwegian and Danish, the words for nightmare are merit and merit, respectively, which can be directly translated as mare ride. The Icelandic word martröð has the same meaning, tróð, from the verb tróda, trample, stamp on, related to tread, whereas the Swedish mardröm translates as mare dream. Sleipnir, sleep mare. The Ginnungagap. Remember, in Norse mythology, the tree of life connects all the worlds, and of the worlds, Manly says that Midgard, Earth, is the only garden, and that is where good and evil meet to do battle. But he is only partially correct. There are actually 2 gardens. We already know that the Garden of Eden is in heaven, in the head, and we can clearly see that Asgard, Asgarden, represents the garden above. So it represents heaven and the Garden of Eden. And that Midgard, Earth, literally means middle garden. So Earth is also a garden, and it is where good and evil meet to do battle. It is the place of struggle, as Schopenhauer pointed out, and how Nietzsche and H agreed wholeheartedly. They knew the struggle was here on Earth. That is why H named his autobiography Mein Kampf, My Struggle. So Manly is correct in that Earth is where good and evil meet and struggle with each other, but there are 2 gardens, not one like he says. Asgard, Midgard, 2 gardens. So Midgard is where we meet in the middle, where we come down from Asgard and meet them who come up from hell, and we struggle for control of this world in the Ginnungagap, the place in the middle. Leave room for the fairies. Also, from Norse mythology, we learn that Jotunheim, also known as Alfheim, Elfhome, is the land of the fairies. And we know fairies are fair, just like the people of the north. Fair-haired and fair-skinned, and fair in their dealings. In Irish, Fairy means the enchantment of the Fae. Fae is derived from Fate, or the Fates. The Fates were goddesses of Greek mythology. We have fair in fairy, which is not only fair or white, but also fair as in fair dealings. It reminds me of the name for the Germans. The Romans called these Friends, who lived in northwest Europe, Germans, to differentiate them from the ones that lived on the west coast in Friesland. The name they gave them is derived from the Latin word Germanus, which means original, and one of their smaller subgroups were called the Franks, named for their honesty or frankness, just like the fairies. We still have the connection between the 2 and their names today, the Dutch and the Deutsch. It's pretty obvious they're from the same tribe, just like Ireland is from Arya land, and Arya is from Freya. Aryans, right, are Phryans. They were also known as the Scyths or the Cis, whatever, but I look at it like Scyth. And their brothers and sisters in the north are known as the Scots. We can see how they are all related. Germination. German nation. The original seed. 9 worlds of Yggdrasil. In Vanaheim on Yggdrasil is another location that we are told where the gods go when they leave Earth. But notice it is lower. This is the place where Phryans go who die a peaceful death. Asgard, or Valhalla, is a place where the brave go. The warriors, the ones that fought for their race, for their people, and so they get the highest honor. I think physically and mentally fighting for their people, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be physical. You just have to be passionate and fight for your people. You have to be brave. Notice directly opposite Josselheim is Svartalheim, which means land of the blacks. So we have fair, light, against black, dark. Notice the tree with green branches. And yes, although the branches below look like roots, we can also say we have a dead tree because the north is pro-nature and the south is anti-nature, the head and the dead. Cain versus Abel. Just observe people on this earth and you will see which races gravitate to the cities, anti-nature, and which race gravitates to the country, pro-nature. Cain and Abel, per Manly, are the 2 lobes of the cerebellum, and they deal with equilibrium, balance in the body. If you are filled with hate and vengeance, consumed by it, then Cain will grow. Remember, Cain in the Bible, after wandering in the wilderness, ended up building a city, anti-nature. Abel was of nature, and Able, A-B-L-E, means having considerable skill, proficiency, and intelligence. This would be symbolic of the white race and their strong work ethic, as well as their love for nature. Abel and Abel. Cain versus Abel. City versus country. Middleman versus white man. Manly mentioned a story about a murderer and how he obtained the brain after he was executed. He relayed that he had in his possession a very remarkable skull, which originally rested on the shoulder of a homicide. It is of high organic quality, but bears the curse of Cain. This individual had a grudge, which he nursed very carefully. Nursed grudges sometimes become very dangerous things. This person swore that when he met a certain man, he would cut his heart out and throw it in his face. A number of years passed, his hatred grew, and at last, meeting his enemy, he attacked him and fulfilled his threat. He was hanged for the crime, but the skull bearing the testimony to the brain reveals a very interesting fact. The right half of the brain is under the control of Mercury, the planet of intelligence, and as a result of the crossing of the brain nerves at the base of the skull, it rules the left side of the body. The left half of the brain, under the control of Mars, the spirit of anger and impulse, rules the right side of the body, and likewise the strong arm. As a result of his hatred and the rulership of Mars, which grew out of that hatred, the left rear side of the brain was fully twice the size of the right side. The individual allowed Mars to control his nature. The impetuosity of Mars ruled him, and he paid with his life for the mark of Cain, Who else has a strong hatred that rules their every waking thought? Oh yes, the middlemen. Is their left cerebellum twice the size of their right? I would wager yes. Tubal Cain is associated with the Masons. They love to raise Cain. Masonic logo, 2 balls and a cane, obviously for the penis and testicles, and also used for the Facebook logo. The 2 hands are pointing up, like on the jewel of the 33rd degree Sovereign Grand Inspector General that Sean showed us earlier. Remember, it's about penis and testicles because Masons worship the sacral plexus. And to be thorough here, we need to add Gmail with their Masonic apron. Notice that the logo has changed from red and white to rainbow colors in 2020. This is part of their diversity programming, pushing us in every respect to accept their agenda. So they are filled with hate and vengeance, raising Cain, as opposed to Phryans, who, as stated in the Orlinda book, were of tempered heat and mild like calm water. They were in balance, equilibrium, and harmony with nature and in their cerebellums. They said even, instead of Eva, because the word was so sacred. What is even? Equilibrium. When things are even, they are in balance, in harmony. Angelic Fisher Men. The angels come from the head, and the devils come from the dead. Angel means white. We were the angels and the gods of mythology, the same gods that the middlemen made us into to rule the masses. Real Phryans, such as Athena, Neptune, and Odin, who after they died, Magi priests turned them into gods. So yes, angels refers to us as well. The Anglos were first named because they were fishermen. Anglers cast a line to catch fish. Just like the Saxons were named after their axe used to cut down trees. They were the forest dwellers. The Anglo-Saxons are the English. Angels, angler, Anglos, fishermen, Anglish. Fishermen and the Bible's fisher of men. White men being caught in their net takes on a whole new meaning. They are the predators. We are their prey. Notice they use prayer against us. Pray and pray. The Anglo-Saxons, dominant on land and sea. Look here where Michael Cohen of that tribe confirms who they are in the 9 worlds of Yggdrasil. Michael Cohen says, there is no bigger lie told about us Ashkenazim than we are Europeans. We are the most distinct of all races. We are not even of the human race, let alone Europeans. We are utterly unique. Our features only blend with humans. Our facial features and proportions infinitely more perfect. We are Anukim and Nephilim, and our DNA is of the gods. We have extra sensory perception, heightened awareness, and increased sentience. Oh my gosh, what a lie, increased sentience. We cannot be defeated by Gentiles any more than humans can be by other mammals. And I think you guys deep in your hearts know it, and it drives you mad. Cohen is the name for the middleman priest class. They get the name from cone, as in the pine cone, saying their priests are illuminated. But note that Cohen is from king, which is what the head of the white race was called. Cone is from king. Notice the CN and KN. King, cone, king. So the king, the head of the white race, was illuminated, the Christ king. That is why they took our kings from us, so it's better to control us. Cohen Cone King. Notice the prominent nose and big ears, characteristics of this tribe. Notice Jotunheim, land of the giants, is the as below, along with Niflheim. Remember that Loki, who is the lord of chaos and was the adopted son of Odin, just like the middlemen are not of us but are adopted into our society, although I would say more like parasited into our society, unwanted guests, came from Jotunheim. The giants of Norse mythology were the enemies of the gods. They would constantly do battle. The white race were considered giants when they arrived in the Mediterranean, the Middle East, and India, but to the Norse, they too had a treacherous nemesis called giant, Loki versus Oki. It's interesting, too, that the Native American Indians had their own god of chaos called Oki, and Oki was a cruel god who needed pain and suffering as offerings. So the Indians gladly obliged, and who especially liked to offer up their white prisoners. So they would capture white men, women, and children and torture them to death for Oki. Noble savages is an oxymoron, most likely a term created by the middlemen. There was nothing noble about them. Loki, Oki, giants. Loki, god of chaos, just like the middlemen, are creators of chaos and destruction and proud of it. The Rainbow Bridge, connecting the realms of Asgard, Midgard, and Hel, is Bifrost, the Rainbow Bridge, or the Fjorden, which we now know is the spinal cord in man. If we look at the Earth model of this, the Aurora Borealis, also known as the Northern Lights, would represent this. The macro of the electrical charge of the spine is the Aurora Borealis. The Aurora Borealis is some sort of electrical discharge, just like how our nerves are electrical lines connected up and down our spine. Are there any auroras over the River Jordan in the Levant? Oh, that's right, there isn't. The Aurora Borealis, otherwise known as the Northern Lights. Illumination is from the north. The Zodiac. And I wanted to add to Sean's comment about Noah's Ark. Noah's Ark is the Zodiac in the sky, the zodiac. It is not only a symbol of enlightenment in our head, but represents the as within, so without, the as above, so below. So we can see how the heavens, earth, man, and his internal makeup are all connected. How God's design is perfectly constructed. Notice there are 12 constellations that make up the zoo in the heavens, and they revolve around the North Star, the one immovable star in the night sky. This is Jesus and his 12 apostles. Jesus in the Last Supper, we can see how this painting has hidden meanings within it. We have the 12 apostles, which not only represent the 12 months, but represent the 12 zodiac signs in the sky, the as above, so below. Jesus is in the center because he represents the North Star, the seat of God. He represents enlightenment. He is wearing both red and blue. He is the battery in the middle, the Alpha and the Omega. Notice the arch above him, showing the shape of our earth plane. And we can see he is actually seated at a round table as well, shown by the circular cut in the table in front of him. This is in the macro sense. If we look at the painting now in a micro sense, we see Jesus in the middle, the pineal gland, with the 12 apostles, or the 12 folds of the brain surrounding him. This is enlightenment in our head. These constellations are also King Arthur and his 12 Knights of the Round Table. This is enlightenment in the heavens. Constellation Arthur. The center of the Round Table is occupied by the Great Bear, Ursa Major, and King Arthur was named after the Celtic word art, meaning bear, or even Arthur, meaning great bear, from which we derive Arthur. Noah's Ark, Zodiac. And although there are only a few animals in the zodiac, such as the bull, the fish, and the lion, we are part of the zoo. God put us in our particular zoological zones and put everything in them for optimal survival. Note that the Bible begins in the age of Taurus with Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, followed by Moses, whose story takes place in the age of Aries. Jesus' story takes place in the age of Pisces, and we will be entering a new age, the age of Aquarius, with the story of the new man that is yet to come in the age of the Aryan. Note also that Sean told us that Jesus was born in the house of bread. Each zodiac sign is a house, and the house of bread would be Virgo. Virgo, the virgin, born of a virgin, holding the sheaf of wheat. Sean tells us this is harvest time, the time when the wheat is ripe, ready to be picked. All the hard work paying off. We know that this time of year is fall and represents the third stage of man, which is a mature adult. Jesus died at 33 years of age, which would be the age of a mature man, the age to fully become enlightened. Christ being born at the winter solstice is symbolic of the sun rising again, of light, the sun, conquering the dark, evil. Two symbolic messages being played out in the zodiac. Virgo, house of bread. Jesus, born of a virgin, Virgo. Notice too that per their calendar, December is the 12th month, but was originally the 10th month. Hence, we get the name December. Dec means 10. So when they moved it, the 10th month becomes the 12th. 10 plus 12 is 22, the number of Lucifer/Christ. On December 22nd, the sun stands still, only to rise again 3 days later, the phoenix rising. In the month of December, we have the sign of Sagittarius up to the 22nd, which is half man and half horse, which is what a Baphomet is, half man and half animal. This Baphomet becomes a goat, greatest of all time, God, at the winter solstice with the sign of Capricorn, the goat. He, Lucifer, rises in the dead when the sun is at its weakest. He is anti-nature, anti-God. This would be illumination in the solar plexus. Notice too that this fool is a Baphomet, a he-she. He has makeup on and is wearing a tunic with flowers all over it, the melding of man and woman, for the middleman's form of enlightenment. True illumination through the pineal gland at the top in the head would be at the summer solstice when the sun, S-O-N, is at its peak. Chiro Practor. And if we go back inside the body, Manly tells us that the spinal cord is an extension of the brain and that this cord is the flaming sword which is supposed to have stood at the gates of the Garden of Eden. We know the spine has 33 vertebrae and ends at the skull of Golgotha. We know that the Masons venerate it, for 33 is their most sacred number. Christ died at 33. 33 is when water melts and all is revealed. So we know that spinal health is very important. So why aren't spine doctors, chiropractors in every hospital and part of every health plan? Because they want us sick. They don't want us to have healthy spines, nervous systems, etc. Chiro means hand, the true healing of the hands. Notice that Chiro has the first part of Christ in it, the Curist. When you go up the ladder, the spine, you become like God, the Christ, the Curist. You cure yourself and you can cure the world. Because many people don't read the Bible these days, they use the media to program the non-Bible reading profane. A good example is in the movie Snowpiercer, where the main character is named Curtis Everett. We can see that Curtis is an anagram of Curist and is one letter away from Christ. Just change out the U with an H. He is the savior of the people on the train in this story. His last name has Veer in it, which means truth. So they are telling us, esoterically, that Curtis is the true Christ or the Savior, leading us to enlightenment. In the movie, he saved the people on the train so they could be free. But, and there's always a but with them, the ones that survived were non-white because in their new world they wanted to be sans the white race. Curtis, Curist, Christ. Curtis Everett, true Christ. Notice the middleman behind him, as always, there to steer us from true enlightenment. We don't see Curtis after he saves the non-whites. He is not part of this new world. Liver. And we have to go back in the body and mention the liver before we go as well. Manly mentions that the liver gets its name because it is essential to live. The liver is the filter of the body. It keeps impurities out. So, of course, they make alcohol legal and promote it heavily because they know how much damage it does to the liver. Liver to live. We think we're pretty clever when we figured out what the shot was all about in 2020, and we dare not take it, but then many of us will go and do other shots by drinking alcohol on a regular basis. I would assume that most of you know of someone who has either died in a drunk driving accident or died from alcohol poisoning. Like masturbation, as Sean mentioned, alcohol also stupefies us. The shot, whether it be a needle in your arm, a liquid in a glass, or a bullet to the heart, they share the same word, shot, because they can all kill you. The liver used to be considered the most important organ in the body and the seat of the soul. Only in more recent times has this shifted to the heart. And we used to eat beef liver regularly at the family dinner table because of its excellent nutritional value, but now it's an odd rarity. Let me just add here, there is a drink that cleans your liver 150 times better than garlic and lemon. Take a cup of chopped up celery, a cup of chopped up beet, a cup of chopped carrot, about a teaspoon of fresh ginger, and then blend it all together. Once done, strain it into a glass, and voila! The best juice to clean that lovely liver. Salt. Salt is another substance of excellent nutritional value to our bodies that they are trying to get us to omit from our diets. Salt is the only rock that we sprinkle on our food and eat. It is neither acidic nor alkaline, but neutral, in between. It is a binder, bringing the two worlds together. It is a link between the sun, fire, and the sea, water. Sun, fire, salt, sea, water. It actually regulates blood pressure as opposed to the mainstream garbage telling us it causes high blood pressure. And during World War II, if they didn't have enough blood for transfusions, they would transfuse the patient with salt water instead. To combat dehydration, they would give soldiers salt tablets. Salt is the binder that brings water to the cells. When we cry, our tears are salt tears. And that's because our bodies are made up of 70% salt water, just like the earth, the as without, so within. In the esoteric circles of alchemy, it was revealed that salt becomes impure and pure of itself. It dissolves and coagulates itself, or, as the sages say, locks and unlocks itself. We know on the Baphomet arms it is written solve, sun dissolves, and coagulate, moon comes back together, are the two great opposing forces, both of which salt does. Here, in the original version of the Baphomet, created by Eliphas Levi, yes, he was of the Middleman tribe, doing the as above, so below, with solve pointing to the sun, solve as in solvent, and coagulate pointing to the moon. One breaks down, the other brings together, while salt is the great neutralizer in between. Off on a little tangent, let's observe the Luciferian Baphomet doing the as above, so below. And we can see the Christian John the Baptist doing the same pose, as well as the Masonic statue of George Washington. And the same as on the Islamic emerald tablet. And the same as on the middleman's The Magician tarot card. Notice he is called the Magician. Magic come from Magi. So we have all three Abrahamic religions doing the sign, as well as the Luciferians and the Masons. Why? Because they are all controlled by the same middlemen. Now let's go back to the wonders of salt. Johann Christoph Stieb remarks that salt is the last in corruption and the first in generation. And Arnaldus de Villanova reveals that whoever possesses the salt that can be melted and the oil that cannot be burned may praise God. The oil is the sacred oil of the spinal cord that lights up the body of man, giving him creative ideas. Salt is the enhancer, the spark. More precise chemical definitions specify that a salt is an electrically neutral ionic compound, and we get hints of salt's importance in the Bible. 2 Kings 2:21. Then he went to the spring of water and threw salt in it and said, "Thus says the Lord, I have healed this water. From now on neither death nor miscarriage shall come from it." So we see the mentioning of salt's healing powers. Salt is the third most vital element needed for life, just behind water, with the first being oxygen. It's that important. Shown is Celtic sea salt, made without using aluminum byproducts, as is table salt. 1 oxygen, 2 water, 3 salt. Genesis 14:3. And all these joined forces in the valley of Siddim, that is, the Salt Sea. The valley of Siddim is located at the southern end of the Dead Sea, which is also known as the Salt Sea. The Dead Sea is the Salt Sea. Sol, and sal. Roman soldiers were paid their wages in salt, showing this mineral is of high value for health, taste, and other uses. We get the word soldier from sal dare, to pay in salt, and also salary. Our wages are from salt pay. And salt is even in their salute. It was that important. Soldier, saldare, salary, salute. Matthew 5:13. You are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. The Dead Sea is also called the Salt Sea. Did you know that salt in Greek is halo? Angels enlighten Christ wear halos. It is the combination of salt with the anointed oil that illuminates. Halo is a Greek prefix meaning salt. The halo, a sign of illumination. The salted crown. Open hand salute. Remember when I said that God doesn't keep secrets? That everything will be revealed? He is open and public, the opposite of the middlemen and their secret societies. Open hand opposed to closed fist. Open hand, as was the salute of the Nazis. It is said that Nazi is a derogatory term, but is it? Or is it the highest compliment? Remember Sean telling us that Nazi Rutha is the highest stage of enlightenment? From Sean, true enlightenment, however, is considered very rare and is called Nazi Rutha. Nazi Rutha, a Nazi truth. The Nazi salute, always open-handed, always on the side of truth and honor. The true peace rune. If we look to H's Germany, we see what true illumination was. H promoted physical fitness, being in nature, eating healthy, and following one's passions. Every soldier was built like an Olympic athlete. Every innovator brought more ideas to fruition than ever before. This is how we become illuminated. We stay away from things that can harm our bodies, such as sugar and alcohol, and we stay away from lecherous debaucheries, such as porn and drugs. It's really very simple. The mystery schools really didn't teach anything that a practical person couldn't learn through observation and research on their own. We need to stop giving in to temptations like joining secret societies, which are service to self traps at the expense of our brethren, and realize that God's world has everything there for our sustenance and enrichment. Take away their power by dropping their Babel Bible, turning off their brainwashing programming tube, and instead concentrate on your own personal growth and the well-being of your tribe. In H's Germany, the adults as well as the youth put physical fitness and health at the forefront of their daily routines. This is in stark contradiction to the middleman propaganda that H and his men did speed during the war. What a joke. That's hilarious. Sodomy and Gomorrah. Another debauchery they want you focused on is sodomy. The ones with morals in their hearts know this is wrong, but others need a little more of an explanation. Well, we know the story of Sodom and Gomorrah in the Bible, and now we know it represents the sacral plexus area, and that area is representative of hell. And we know that those towns were burned for doing immoral acts. And we know that today the ones in control are pushing sodomy on the masses. We know that all the focus is on the behind because it is unnatural, against nature and the creative creation process. Once again, wasting your seed, your path to enlightenment. The dance trend called twerking came about because they put that in the media. a way to program the youth that anal sex is okay. It is not. It is against nature. Remember the unnatural, against nature, against God. Notice Robin Thicke in his Masonic black and white, all by design, of course, with Miley Cyrus doing the Kali tongue, the destroyer, who the middlemen like to call themselves the destroyers. Reflect back in history on the Catholic priests and the monks and the nuns and how they were all celibate. The monks especially spent most of their time in solitude, studying, trying to become enlightened by saving their seed. They knew. The Catholic priests go through the motions publicly, but you just have to do a little research to see that many of the popes had wives and had mistresses. They were service to self by offering things like indulgences. They are as bad as the snake oil salesman we mentioned earlier. Pope John XII was far from celibate. He had notorious affairs while in office. And did you catch that the nuns were named after Nun in the Bible? And that Nun means fish? That Nun was the father of Joshua, and so was the seed as well. We know there are only two ways to use the seed, either using the seed for procreation, regeneration of the race, or by holding the seed to raise the Christ oil and achieve enlightenment. It seems the nuns, possibly in the beginning, were doing the latter. The nuns were celibate and saved themselves for enlightenment. God was their husband, meaning enlightenment should be their commitment. But do modern-day nuns even have a clue about the seed? I highly doubt it. Many are most likely lesbians, which is against nature, and they promote universalism, which is the path to destruction, destroying the seed, destroying the races, anti-nature. Before we leave the nuns, we can notice two other things. Nun is the un with an N in front. The N's for Lucifer, the un. Also, nun phonetically is the same as none, N-O-N-E, as in nothing. They produce no offspring, hence the nuns. N-U-N is N-Un, none, N-O-N-E. Looking like fishes, a school of fish, wearing Masonic black and white, and of course doing the hidden hand. There are 12 of them to represent the apostles, but also the 12 folds of the brain. Fairy tales. And I need to make a point on Norse mythology before we leave you, because some might think, well, the Bible has hidden meanings, and it seems that Norse mythology does too. But are they the same? Norse mythology was a way to keep the knowledge of our makeup in story form, just like with our fairy tales and how they are stories for our children to learn who our enemies are and to watch out for them. But what is different from our mythology and our fairy tales as opposed to the Bible is that they trick us into thinking their book is literally real and that we must be subjected by it. They give us the exoteric, made-up nonsense and keep the esoteric truth hidden from us. Our books are there as a warning to our people, not used to trick other races, trick our enemies. Remember, there are 66 books in the Bible, and they use 2 Star of Davids to symbolize this control over us. Here is a master mason proudly displaying the 66. Our fairy tales had morals to them. Let me give you a few examples. Hansel and Gretel, 2 Freudian children, are held captive by a greedy witch and have to work together to overcome her and escape. Moral of the story: beware of the middleman tribe, who never have good intentions. Hansel and Gretel is a story about being wary of the middlemen and women Notice the prominent nose and chin. 3 billy goats gruff. 3 billy goats need to cross a bridge, but a greedy troll tries to stop them. In the end, the troll is too greedy, wanting the big goat at the end, and so lets the little goats escape. Moral of the story: beware of the middleman tribe, who are never fair in their dealings. The Norwegian fairy tale called 3 Billy Goats Gruff is another good example of how we make our children aware of the danger of the middleman, the troll with the big nose and ears, lurking. Rumpelstiltskin. In the fairy tale Rumpelstiltskin, the imp-like man is no other than the middleman. It is his profession to turn everything into gold, and he tries to trick the maiden into making promises to him in exchange. Moral of the story: always tell the truth and be responsible for your actions. When dealing with a middleman, his intentions are never good. Norse Mythology. And if we look back at the tales of King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table, we find the maiden Guinevere. We can break her name down between Gwen and Veer. Gwen, or Gwen, means white, fair, blessed, and holy, while Veer means truth or true. Remember Curtis Everett and Veer in his name? So Guinevere means white and true. Here we have the riders of the Sidhe, depicting fairies on drossels, horses. Remember that drossel is the last part of Yggdrasil, the tree of life. Notice that the one in front is holding a Yule tree, a tree of life, of enlightenment, showing its connection to Yggdrasil. And if you look closely, you'll see the lovely swastika on the brown horse's bridle. Riders of the Sidhe, painted by John Duncan in 1911, exhibited at the Royal Scottish Hall. Aryan Rising. In the past, when our people explored the earth looking for new lands, our seed was used properly, creating brave adventurers, inventors. Our families were big. We peopled not only Europe in no time, but America, Canada, South Africa, and Australia too. Now, today, we are experiencing de-enlightenment, families shrinking, our race shrinking in population, as well as our lands. We are atrophied. Action and consequence. Expansion, spring, summer, young man, mature man, and then the fall of man, shrinking old man, winter, an end of an age, end of an age. The honey dries out, the milk dries out, and we die, setting the stage for a new age, the Aryan age. Earth must die and be reborn too. Phoenix rising, we rise again. Christians get baptized to be born again. True rebirth is through illumination, symbolized by the phoenix. As Sean and I were discussing this topic, I told him I wanted to make sure that when people go over this presentation, they understand that just because they, the middlemen, know this knowledge doesn't mean that they are enlightened. That enlightened people are higher men, the ones that have brought beautiful works of art, music, inventions that help humanity, and philosophical writings that help people to understand who we are and who God is. People that uplift humanity. People, on the other hand, that deceive, control, enslave, and oppress humanity are the opposite of enlightened. People who bring humanity down. These people might know how to become enlightened, but know they can never attain it because it's not in their nature, in their seed. So they do everything to stop the seed that can. Corinne Helene, in her book Occult Anatomy and the Bible, says it pretty well. The powers of light and darkness contend for mastery on every plane of manifestation. The vital body is under the control of the angelic kingdom, and the desire body is under the Lucifers. Their combat ground is within man. Each hierarchy endeavors to invade the kingdom of the other. Man lends his assistance to these contenders one way or the other by yielding supremacy to his higher or his lower nature. Let me add that Phrygian, Aryan, man is higher nature, and that middle man is lower nature in this battle. The angels are the white race, and the Lucifers are the middle man race, and they are both in the flesh, not spiritual beings we can see flying through the air. No one is coming to save us. We have to save ourselves. The morals are in our hearts, the hearts of the angels of the white race, and the immorals are in their hearts, the hearts of the Lucifers of the middleman race. It is a battle, but the good will prevail because God is in good. God good, devil evil. And with this wise quote from the Oralinda book. Instead, then, of disgracefully imitating the wicked Findas, middleman race, and practicing occultism by saying I am, or I am the best part of Waralda, and yes, through us alone he can think, we proclaim everywhere where it is necessary. We, Freya's children, exist through Waralda's life, in the beginning, insignificant and naked, but always advancing towards perfection without ever attaining the excellence of Waralda himself. Our spirit is not Waralda's spirit. It is merely a reflection of it. When Waralda created us in his wisdom, he lent us his brains, senses, memory, and many other good qualities. By this means we are able to contemplate his laws. By this we can learn and reason, solely for our own good. Had Waralda not given us our senses, we would have known nothing of these, and would have been more ignorant than a piece of seaweed driven forth by the ebb and tide. Hail Freya, long live Freya. All the best. Take care.